Good morning and welcome to the Construction Wales Innovation Centre's Offsite Ready webinar series, where today on the third instalment, we're just waiting for some extra individuals to join us, currently at 16 attendees, and we have planned just a slightly higher number than that. So we'll give a couple of minutes for those wait a couple of minutes for those to join us, and hopefully we start just after 10:35.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
It's last minute, guys. My daughter's just come down from Cardiff to bring me a laptop.
Just to let you know, Lindsay, we're online. We've got attendees online as well. Your screen, just if you on the top right hand side, you've got a little traffic light system on the box on the right. You just have to toggle the camera and it'll allow you to view a screen. Well, not view your screen, but to actually see you. Apologies. I can hear you, but the camera's off. Brilliant. Looks damper there, Lindsay, than it does with us here at the moment. It's.
Are you? Yeah, I can imagine. Llandeilo, the sun always shines on the righteous, Gareth.
Oh well, yeah. Out the window, it's not too bad. It has been. I took my son to, as most people online, I sort of don't mind sharing because most people are in the same position. But it's son started back school today, so as you walked out through the door, it starts raining. So, and then you're waiting to put them into the school, and then it starts raining again. So yeah, it's okay. So we've currently now got online 19 attendees. That's a great number for us today. We will commence now, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, bore da, croeso, good morning, and welcome to the third instalment of Construction Wales Innovation Centre's Offsite Ready webinar series. Offsite Ready is a collaborative project led by Construction Scotland Innovation Centre in partnership with Edinburgh and Napier University, Moby, Class of Your Own and Quick, and all made possible by CITB funding. It's great to have so many of you online, now up to 20, and my name is Gareth Evans and I'm the Centre Manager at the Construction Wales Innovation Centre. I'd like to more importantly introduce my fellow presenters this morning. Online we have a mix of industry and academics. So industry, we have Andy King, Deputy Managing Director for Wernick, and Mark Carter, Commercial Manager for Wernick. We also have Lindsay Richards, Senior Lecturer in Quantity Surveying at the University of Wales Trinity Saint David. Lindsay and the team at Wernick have a wealth of experience within offsite construction and especially in the use of hybrid systems within projects, and in Lindsay's case, within the commercial and estimating side of the industry. So now on to the content of today's webinar. Our presenters, Lindsay, will be exploring one of the modules for the Offsite Ready programme, and we'll hear from Andy and Mark around their experience of working in an offsite construction model. As well as exploring the resources, we'll also be having a conversation. We'll also have an opportunity to explore some questions from you, the audience. So, in readiness for that, I'm going to give you just a little short tour of the usability of the system. So on the right-hand side of your program, you have on your screen, you should have a chat facility. Should you have any questions at any time, feel free to add a question to the chat. These chats will be monitored. If you have an operational issue, like your loss of sound or you just need to leave for any time, feel free to drop that into our chat. But if you do have a question for any of the panelists at any time, please feel free to drop it in the chat. These will be sent through to the panelists, they'll be monitored and they'll be conveyed then at the appropriate times. We have 2 slots available for questions throughout the session, and we'll be benchmarking those there. Now then, you've heard enough from me. Firstly, we have a poll that we will explore. We have 3 polls during this webinar. And the reasons for the poll are essentially to feed back information to CITB, to our funders in readiness for further funding. Now, this first poll is, which aspect of off-site construction do you believe needs further awareness? Digital design, estimating and commercial, off-site manufacture, placement and assembly. So those online with us today, those that are attending, feel free to answer that poll in readiness for us to feed back that information to our funders. Thank you. Great, brilliant. So we have online, 40% of the beneficiaries on today agreed that estimating and commercial was the area which required further awareness. Now, interestingly enough, that is an area that we'll be covering today, so hopefully we'll enlighten you somewhat further on there, but we'll definitely feed that back to our funders. Now, into content. I'd like to now introduce Andy and Mark from Wernick, who have kindly agreed to be on with us today to provide us an insight into Wernick, the work they undertake. So, Andy, welcome, and Mark, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us here today. I'm Andy. This is Mark. We're going to show you a short video in a second. Just to sort of sum up what we do, just to give you a good idea at Wernick. We're actually the UK's oldest modular manufacturer. We started manufacturing modular buildings in 1934, and we've also had a factory in Wales since 1989. Our present factory is in Kenfig Industrial Estate, which is near the sort of Port Talbot Steelworks. And we've been here for just 6 years now from when we moved from Neath Abbey. At our production facility here, we manufacture around 900 square meters of finished modular building per week. And they go to everywhere in the country, from sort of here in Wales. We've just built school buildings in Canelli. All the way up to Scotland is a huge market we operate in, as well as sort of Cornwall, South East, and pretty much everywhere around the country. Predominantly, the modular buildings we're producing today are used as permanent design and build solutions. So we still produce some temporary classrooms, but most of it is permanent design and build, as you're going to see in the video that we'll show. And that is our preference, is to operate as a sort of design and build contractor. And the reason Mark's sort of going to explain to you today about the commercial side, which is what you asked for in the poll, as to how to procure a modular building, and the best way sort of to go about that process. So I'll just show you the short video now. What that does is it sums up a project we've recently done at Swansea University's Bay campus. That was a 2,800 square meter lecture block, and hopefully, as you sort of see it, it's probably a far cry from what a lot of people still have an old-fashioned perception that a modular building is sort of the older timber mobile school classroom that you have. Today's modular buildings are a sort of long way from that. and hopefully once we watch the video, we'll be able to answer any questions that yourselves may have. So I'll just play the video now. Can everyone see that? Is the video playing okay?
Yeah.
Yes, it's running perfectly for us.
So this building it's just an overview of what we do in the factory. So as I said, we're producing some 900 square meters of building a week. Those modules typically somewhere around sort of 10 meters by 3 meters, and they go mainly into education, health, office, and other areas. So we've recently done 2 buildings at Swansea University. One was a couple of years ago, which is, you can see now, that's the active office, and that's an energy positive office. And the one that's on screen now is the new lecture theatre down up there. And that sort of perception of modules being old-fashioned, they're very much moved on now in terms of large open plan, light airy spaces, CLT floors, concrete floors, high thermal efficiency, and lots of different aspects. And that's what we're really trying to promote as a company, in terms of there's no difference between traditional construction and modular construction, but you're achieving all those benefits of offsite from factory build, improved quality, shortened programs, and then ultimately leading to value for money.
Excellent, Andy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that video. And I think for us, it's a great insight into how far modular, like you said, how far modular construction has travelled over the sort of recent years. And there's a number of exemplar projects there local to us, and in many cases, we may have some online that benefit from your buildings on their sites. So it's really good to have that insight. I've already got some questions actually posed here and coming through the system. So I picked one of the answers out actually from your video. But when's the best point within a building project to choose to go modular? What would you as a modular constructor, you obviously want to be involved as early as possible, but how early do you get involved?
Certainly the best solution for a modular building is really back at REBA stage 2 or even REBA stage 1, where you're looking at that initial concept. That's when you sort of need to make that decision whether you're going to go down a traditional route or an offsite route to try and that. And the main reason that is around the sort of the design requirements, in that it's a waste of people's time and effort to go and employ a design team and come up with a design, finalize that design, go and look for planning, and then bring in a modular contractor. You really need to bring in the modular partner along with your design team. I mean, we work independently as the designer, or we work with an architectural team. So the architect's concept is driven around and designed around efficient module sizes, efficiencies of manufacture, and that will ultimately achieve the best value for money on a project and also help to compress the program down. So as early as possible, and that is the key, and that's what we're trying to promote, is that, and it leads into what Mark will talk about in terms of 2-stage tendering or utilising a framework. It's much better to go down that 2-stage approach.
Yeah, very much so. And actually, there's a place for us at stage 1, which is obviously preparation of briefing, because at that point, we're able to be involved with the client's budget, which is very, very important, obviously. And I always use the analogy, I guess most of us watch TV programs like Grand Designs, and we switch on the television, and those who are professionals in the industry and so forth, we watch these, and we're looking at very, very good architectural design and so forth. And then it comes to the bit about where the question is asked, how much do you think this is going to cost? And that's probably from that point on where a lot of the problems that a construction project have is right at that beginning. And I always say to a client, if your budget is right, then hopefully your project is going to be well delivered and on budget. So I actually advocate stage one because I think there's merit in us and we add value at that stage.
Thank you both. And as it happens, we've just had a really interesting question. I think it's timely to ask it because it goes along to what we've just been talking about now. How do you sell a modular project, an off-site project to a customer rather than a traditional one? If you have a customer that's halfway house, doesn't know which way to turn, what would you say? How would you sell that to a customer? The benefits.
You are to sell the benefits. I mean, the key thing from a modular project, it's ultimately is speed. So the project will be quicker. It could be up to 50% quicker than producing it traditionally. And then so you're selling on speed. And then with speed, and it's interesting because most things in life, if you buy something from Amazon and choose one-day delivery, you usually pay more for something that comes quicker. But with a construction project, if you're speeding things up, what you're actually then doing is reducing the non-value add aspects of a project. So, for example, a door's a door and a window's a window. But if you're doing a project in 10 weeks instead of 20, then the site fencing, the site accommodation, the management, and all those non-value add elements, they're actually reduced. So the cost of that reduces. And then ultimately that will provide a cheaper project because the project is quicker and it has less non-value. So you're selling on, you've got to sell on the obviously the project and the building design, the quality of what you're providing, the speed and the certainty of speed. And the other side of the modular project, because you do much more design at the beginning, cost certainty is another key. So it's speed certainty and cost certainty are the two biggest things that you're really selling on. A project isn't going to overrun and it isn't going to go up in cost because you're doing that initial design, especially as Mark has said, you've been involved early and you've worked on that design to be an efficient modular solution rather than taking a traditional solution with planning and then flipping it to modular where you're actually spending twice on the design. So it is speaking to people very early, and it isn't easy to convince someone to buy something differently than the way they've done for years. But if you can explain that process and the benefits, hopefully they will accept that, engage early, and then we can deliver them a value for money project.
I think it is that unknown. I think a lot of customers, are scared of the unknown, and like you use the word different there, and being different, there's always that concern, isn't there? Until I suppose they see projects progressing, they see exemplar projects like you've displayed to us this morning, and those are key ways to be able to convince clients across Wales to engage with using sort of an off-site modular construction basis. Picking up one more question on design, what are the limitations of modular design? Have you a limit? What can you do? Is there a what can be done with modular construction these days?
From a limitation perspective, there's the end building. Ultimately, there is no limit. Where you have to be clever in your design is breaking it into modules and then turning it into that. So there's a lot of hybrid construction where modules, so ultimately the limit on module sizes is transport height and transport width. So where you're looking at normal single-story rooms, they can quite often be broken and simply into modules. where you're looking at atria and double height spaces, sports halls for schools, then they're sort of combined with a portal frame or a panelised solution. So the days of a module being 9x3 and 2.4 high, they're very much gone. I mean, certainly in some of the photos you saw of the Swansea University building there, we can achieve 3.6 metre ceiling heights and still transport them. If you need to go higher than that, you then link them with a panel solution or a portal frame solution. So the limit really is your imagination, because you can have panelised and modular to just create what is the most efficient sort of outcome that you're looking for.
Great, no, thank you, Andy. That's really interesting, really good insight. So, and I'm so glad to see. So we have, we've got questions coming in, and there will be a few more questions in due course a little bit later on in the webinar. But at this point, I'll move on, and I'll move on to the next poll that we have. So we have a poll before we hear from Lindsay, and the poll will appear on your screen now. And the poll is, which stage of offsite construction is the most significant in regards to estimating and commercial? Strategic, definition, concept design, spatial coordination, manufacturing and construction. So as we wait for our attendees to vote on that, nearing the end, I can see there's only a couple left to vote. Great. So we can see there that we've got a tie. It looks like so there are two areas that have come out as leaders here. They're joint leads. So which stage of offsite construction is most significant in regards to estimating commercial, strategic, definition and concept design are both leaders for us today. Great, brilliant, thank you very much. I'm now going to introduce Lindsay Richards. So Lindsay is a senior lecturer at the University of Wales Trinity Saint David. And Lindsay's also runs is a director of her own practice. So very from two sides of the coin, has an strong academic experience, but also has an industry experience as well, which is long-standing. So Lindsay, we'll open you to the table. I believe you're going to just run over some of the offsite ready resources and give us a little overview of how you've integrated these into your offer, but also touch on estimating and commercial in general with some questions.
Okay, good morning, Borda, everyone. Basically, you're all aware that that this project funded by the CITB is here to ensure that people we're training people, professionals and skilled workers in preparation for what we expect to be a huge expansion in offsite manufacturing. Wernick's fantastic presentation from Andy and Mark. As a university, we're really fortunate to have them on board, helping out with our students' experience, if you like. They've already visited the factory at Wernick's, huge advantage. Part of this project is all about that. It's about collaboration with industry as well. So whereas this project is set up to ensure that we have the necessary materials that trainers and lecturers can use to ensure that we're making sure that our future professionals and skilled workers are ready for offsite manufacturing. This particular module, close to my heart, is about commercial and estimating. So as a quantity surveyor, I tend to be a bit biased. Each of the modules is split up into different sections, and this particular module is split up into 6 different sections. They are digital skills, information management and communication. We have to ensure that everyone is upskilled in IT and the digital skills required for offsite manufacturing. Procurement, tendering and contracts. This is quite an important one because most of, if I use our undergraduates as an example, we obviously introduce them to traditional methods of procurement. And when we look at offsite manufacturing, we have to ensure that they understand the differences and the availability, if you like, of procurement routes that they can use. And the module just covers that and provides a framework for presenters, lecturers to use as a vehicle, if you like, to deliver. Health and safety underneath commercial and estimating, important, because when it comes down to it, most projects, when we're looking at the cost of projects, we have to ensure we understand the risks. Health and safety are an important part of that. Again, because we're looking at off-site manufacturing, there's a slightly different way of looking at things. You could argue that because we're looking at a more controlled environment within a factory location, that we're taking away a lot of that risk from the uncertainties on site. Andy, I know in the past has compared it to starting in a dirty old field with a building as opposed to a clean factory floor, which is true. It's exactly that. We've got more controlled environments in health and safety, but really important. There's a cost element attached to that risk. Management and planning. It's already been mentioned about the about early engagement and the importance of it. It's a slightly different mindset, and we have to ensure that alongside our traditional teaching of the traditional RIBA procurement route, for instance, we consider what we need to look at when taking on off-site manufacturing. It depends on the scale of the project, how much fabrication is involved as well, of course, but that adds to the complications as well. So it makes procurement even more important, choosing the right contracts to use. We look at factory operations. Under factory operations, for the commercial side, we look at T&Cs. We have to ensure that our students are aware of conditions that they're agreeing to when they're looking at these different contracts within a factory environment. Site operations is the last one. Site operations involves analysis of tenders as well. So again, slightly different to, although we have traditional analysis of tender using the RIBA route again, we have a little bit more complicated consideration in site operations, and this module actually covers a structure there to ensure that our students and trainees are developing their meta skills in readiness for site manufacturing. So I think that explains the module. The handouts that are attached here today include that breakdown, but also provide extra information. For instance, you'll have case studies there. And in fact, Wernick's a part of the case studies. I'm not sure of this particular module, but you will see some Wernick buildings that might look a little bit familiar, particularly from this area in Swansea, within that module content too.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. What I'm going to do as well now is I'm going to just show those attendees online where the resources are. And Lindsay, as Lindsay alluded to earlier, Lindsay co-authored some of the resources for Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, and rightly noted that Wernick have prominent place in some of the literature. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen, and those that are online should be able to see this. Just to confirm, can you see an Offsite Ready website?
Yes.
Yes, great. So this is the Offsite Ready website. So for those academics on today and lecturers and teachers on today that want to learn more about Offsite Ready, this is the website. It's available on www.offsiteready.com. And you have availability to travel a path which basically outlines events. So our event today was listed on the website, but also we have a lot of training materials available. So today we focus on digital design and estimating. So I can pick one, I'll go into estimating and commercial. And what we find here is a mix of infographics, video content. We also have the module descriptors in there, and we also have literature that can be utilized, downloadable literature and downloadable videos from YouTube platforms that can be utilized and integrated within your own teacher materials. So, and there's a little statement at the bottom that there are more resources appearing online every day. So the team at Construction Scotland Innovation Centre are updating this on a regular basis. So what we find is that there's a strong mix of resource available there, and again, you know, there's a very interactive video there on estimating and commercial. It's a great maybe insight into the world of estimating and commercial without having to delve. So if you are, for instance, depends on the level of education you're teaching at, you may just want to touch upon it. If you're at a higher level, university level, obviously the depth is going to be greater, but you know, there's a resource for everybody on here essentially. As well as that, you also have elements like the Student Design Challenge. So last week I was fortunate enough to actually judge upon this Student Design Challenge, and it was an excellent challenge. It was something that could easily be replicated within a just a student cohort within a college university setting, where you had teams of different professionals, and they were student professionals working together to deliver a proposal to a client. And the brief is online, so should you want to again pick that up and integrate that within your teaching, feel free to drop it on. Again, you know, exemplar of what's available. Now then, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and let me just stop showing screen, and I hope I'm back onto. There we are. I hope I'm back onto my camera. Just a couple of questions, Lindsay, if that's okay. In terms, you know, it's great to hear how we sort of, you know, what the resources are and how you're integrating them. But you know, for me, it's more important to sort of delve in possibly into the maybe into the more sort of industry-based sides of this conversation. How do you think that estimating for offsite construction differs from traditional construction estimating? Does it differ? Are there techniques that are standalone for offsite?
Okay, so I think that traditional training of a quantity surveyor when it comes to estimating, for instance, isn't going to alter much, in that when we look at things, we're looking at we're looking at cost databases, basically. We're looking at the designing of those, the setting up of those, and of course in offsite manufacturing, and I'm sure that Wernick would agree to that, they'll have their own history, they'll have their own historic cost information that's tried and tested, updated as they've got live material information. So from that point of view, it's slightly even more reliable than a system like the BCIS, because the BCIS, we rely on historic cost information, but by then we haven't got a full picture. Although we have the drawings, we have a specification. When it comes to offsite manufacturing, every single component can be really efficiently priced and estimated. We're taking away that risk, a lot of the risk that we'd see with early site construction maybe. So that makes it a lot easier as well to be a little bit more certain with our prices. But as far as the actual costing is concerned, not much is going to change in the processes we use. It's just that they'll be adapted slightly and probably more reliable.
Great, no, thank you. We heard a little earlier around, you know, from your experience within industry then, so, you know, where we have maybe the contractors in Wernick here, from your industry experience, you know, is early involvement from, you know, between yourselves and subcontractors within the design and planning stage, you know, how can sort of that be incentivized in procurement?
Sorry, is that for me or for Wernick?
Yeah, well, for Mark or yourself, really. It's you know, open forum. How can early involvement of subcontractors in design and planning be?
As from my point of view, I'm looking at procurement and the contractual side. We'd be looking at things like what procurement routes are there to offer us that chance to collaborate early, and using the NEC4, for instance, which is probably the most commonly used on large projects anyway. We have that secondary option. I think it's X12 for early involvement of subcontractors and suppliers. So we can. The contract is a lot more flexible than some of the more traditional procurement routes to ensure that we have that early involvement.
Great.
Mark has got something to add to that.
Yes.
No, I absolutely agree. It's spot on. And just going back to your estimating and cost peak there. Yeah, absolutely right. So you still have the basic and traditional QS skills and knowledge, even when we prepare tenders estimates here. Yes, a lot of it is known costs, and you're absolutely right, because they come from a factory environment, manufacturing environment. But there are other parts of the project which are outside of that, of course, and we still rely on the traditional QS skills, so it has its part as well. But yes, cost certainty, that's absolutely spot on.
I suppose the last one I have as well is I suppose to the panel, to both panelists. What skills do you see that future construction professionals need to become offsite ready? You know, are there any glaring holes within construction education at the moment, at all levels, that construction professionals and trades require to become offsite ready?
Shall I start my quantity surveying hat on then? I feel that from a quantity surveying point of view, if I look at the sort of standard skills, you know, practical, logically minded, creative approach to problem solving, strong numerical skills and financial management skills, ability to manipulate cost databases, good IT, good negotiation skills. These are all skills that we actually would traditionally ensure that our quantity surveyors have, and estimators. I just think that move towards offsite manufacturing is quite an easy one. It's just ensuring they're introduced to the processes, just as we're trying to do at UWTSD, but with our involvement with Wernick, so that they can actually see a different way of using those skills, but they're exactly the same skills, I feel. I'm sorry, I don't know whether you agree, Mark and Andy, with that.
I absolutely agree. You're right. Yes.
One of the things I look at is people, especially people that have got a lot of experience with the industry of doing it in one way. You have to have a very open mind to doing it differently, in the way that a modular or an offsite manufacturer presents their costs and their breakdowns. It's different than you would if you were doing a traditional breakdown, and therefore one of the frustrations we get is when we're provided with a tender and we've got to fill in sort of a cost program, and we're looking at it, and the client says, I want it breaking down like this. And in a modular solution, you can't always break it down that way, because you can't take a floor and a wall and split them apart, because they're part of it. So it's for everyone to have that sort of acceptance that there's more than one way to do it, and therefore the generic presentation of information might be different if you're procuring your module or your building using a different methodology.
I think what Andy means there mainly is when we receive inquiries and tender opportunities, is when it comes to contract sum analysis. Invariably, they're set out for a traditional build. As Andy just said, it doesn't lend itself to modular. And trying to get that across is sometimes very difficult.
Yeah,
obviously
sorry. We in industry, we have our standard elemental breakdown, as you say, things like that. Yeah. I think we need to take a second look at. I think the contracts and procurement are sort of catching up and providing some flexibility, but I agree. I think some of the processes that we traditionally look at from a quantity surveying point of view, for instance, I think those would have to be revisited and looked at in a different way when we're analysing costs for offsite manufacturing in particular.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you all. That's a really interesting insight there. And what we're going to do now is we have got a number of questions that have come in from the audience actually. So I'm going to hold on those a second, but in readiness for our question time, essentially, I'm just going to complete the last poll. And the last poll will appear on your screens now. And that poll is, what do you think the biggest benefit of offsite construction in regards to cost? Reliability and resource management, predictable delivery times, reliable cost estimation, life cycle costs. So those that are attending with us today, feel free to vote, and we have 67%, a runaway winner there, reliability and resource management. So thank you for those polls, and thank you. That information will be relayed back to the funders and relayed back to the leads. Now, thank you for the insight, panelists, in terms of what you had to present. We do have now a question time opening from the floor from our attendees. The first one, if you don't mind, I'll start with is one from a colleague of ours in Salford University, and that is how can modular design be adapted in future for other uses? Is a modular building, much like a traditional building, can it be adapted? Can it be modified, extended? What are the capabilities of modular construction?
Well, most modular buildings, certainly in the commercial aspect, because there's two types of modules. There are modules that are used in commercial, they're predominantly open plan. And modules that are used in residential are more like an individual box. So if you look at commercial open plan modules, they can be up to 12 meters by 4 meters per module. Completely open plan, therefore they've got no structural posts inside. So whether they be an office 1 week or they can be converted the year after to something else, they're completely flexible because that structural box is there. You also then have predominantly the ability to take modules away to add extra modules. We've been, with social distancing at the moment, we've actually been adding additional stories to quite a few buildings over the last 3 or 4 months, where people are just genuinely looking for extra space. And you've been quite simply building up as well as building out. So certainly a commercial open plan modular, which is used for schools, hospitals, sort of offices, it's very, very flexible to convert, reuse, relocate, do whatever. The residential type pod, which is a 4-sided pod in order to sort of stand up, then that's much more difficult to change because it's predominantly been made for flats and other aspects like that. But from a commercial aspect, exceptionally simple.
Great, no, thank you for that insight, Andy. It's I think that's why it's again one of these. It's one of the considerations. So when people are engaging with this and thinking about traveling this path, down the line, we know that there are modifications. We know, especially in the residential area, we know that we may need to extend, but even as simple as how flexible it could be. Should your family, if you decide to build a modular property, should your family grow, it may be as simple as adding further pods. To be able to, and we see examples of that happening. Scandinavia areas, that are essentially leading in this at the moment, and we see examples that have travelled that path and how people have embraced it. So yeah, it's really interesting. That one was a good question as it happens. So one from me, and it's a common theme. It always seems to come up actually. In terms of this is. Sustainability, environmental benefits of using modular. What, as a company, what are your views on sustainability and environmental benefits of going modular?
Well, the key with a modular solution is you're building the building off-site in a factory to start. So you have all those benefits of much less waste creation because suppliers are delivering materials to a central location. Packaging is reduced because if you're getting your windows from the same supplier, then between you develop stillages to be able to bring materials in. So you're really following all those efficiencies that the car industry have sort of done, where suppliers go into a central point. We actually did a waste study for a BREEAM Excellent building that we provided. And in building the modules within the factory, we found that the waste generated in the factory for the manufacture of 1,000 square meters of building was 0.15% of materials by weight against the building that we were creating. Whereas it's often seen that traditional can be sort of 10+% waste. We were sort of way under less than 1% of what waste was generated. So then you also, if you have got people coming to that central location on site, there's significantly less disruption on the site because there's far fewer deliveries. There is the day or the few days where the crane is in operation, but then there's a lot less transient workers going to the site. So there's a lot less noise, there's a lot less disruption. Also, typically a modular building is actually a slightly lighter structure. So it's, again, interesting using the analogy of the Swansea University building. Pretty much every building down at the Fabian Way campus has been piled over time. And the two modular buildings that we've built down there, both of them have sat on pads and used significantly less materials into the ground because the modular building has a lighter footprint onto the ground and therefore can get away with being engineered to provide and use lower materials. And at the end of the day, those buildings are very simple to either remove and recycle or relocate. And if you relocate a building, then ultimately you're taking that embodied energy within that first build and moving it to the second site. You aren't releasing it during demolition and then taking a load more on when you build again. So it is sort of, there's huge benefits from the sustainable sort of credentials of using offsite.
Great. And one thing I picked up on your presentation, actually, you know, we are, I suppose, in Wales, if we look at our sector here in Wales, you operate a hybrid system. So, you know, obviously you're working with metallic structures. You're also working with timber. So you are very clearly using a hybrid system. Do you use any other innovations to? I noticed some images that link to thermography. You know, do you use any other innovations that maybe that you can share with us to measure, you know, to measure energy efficiency, or even in the design process? You know, what systems do you use? You know, to essentially give educators online a you know, an insight into maybe what we should be looking at to giving our students within our education institutions a leg up in regards to, you know, what they need to engage with to be fit for industry. So
one of the key benefits with offsite is it's a bit like car production in that you build a prototype, you test, you trial, and you use that prototype, and then from that you create many derivatives of it. So the sort of key thing that, unlike traditional construction, when we design a new modular system, we will build it, we will prototype it, we will test it, trial it, and whether that be it'll be fire testing, it'll be thermography, it'll be acoustic testing. So then we look to reuse that system all the time because it's proven. And then we can make those modules longer, shorter, narrower, wider. We can put more together to give that architectural flexibility. So you're always looking to ensure that you can pre-design as much as possible. We look at materials. We've stopped using sort of pouring concrete floors within modules, and we started to use CLT floors. They provide the same feel within the floor, but significantly more sort of environmentally friendly from a CLT product as opposed to a concrete product. Also, it's easier to work from a factory perspective, but has the same sort of on-site performance. A lot moving now with all that link towards combustible and non-combustible materials, looking at thermal mass. So really, modular builders are always looking to innovate because unlike in a traditional way where you're picking materials off the shelf and putting them into a building, nobody's pre-designing our materials. We are the OEM manufacturer. So we have to do the initial design. So we do a lot of digital design. And even down to when you go to site, if we've got a complex building, we'll actually run a digital simulation of the crane installation strategy to work out whether we do a large crane in one location or multiple small cranes in lots of locations, because you offset against that the need to put extra trackway down, have more sort of space on site. So really embracing that sort of digital technology, because all our what I would call all our sort of larger buildings, they're all done from that sort of 3D perspective. everything is worked up. We provide, and certainly we find in healthcare applications and other applications where a non-construction professional needs to visualize their building, we use quite a lot of VR, where we will create a model of the building. We'll effectively allow nurses and sort of health staff to sort of walk around their building virtually, because they're trying to get an understanding of what's happening and how is it going to work. So linking all that together is that we've got to do a lot more up front in order to make sure that the design is complete, because to achieve the speed on site that you're looking for, one, you have to educate the client to make decisions before things are built, but also in order to educate them, you have to provide them with the resources to make those decisions. A lot of people struggle to make a decision looking at a drawing if they're not a construction professional. So the more digital technology and make things far more lifelike, then people can make decisions earlier, which will allow you to achieve your cost and your program certainty from your offsite solution.
Great. Yeah, it's you know, and it's exceptionally sort of, we heard yesterday, there was a webinar yesterday, and we heard from another contractor that they've embraced the use of digital modelling as well. You know, like you mentioned, craneage and so on earlier, but also you know, I picked it up from the presentation, the use of thermography, but also nice to hear the use of virtual reality there. You know, in terms of being able to, is that user experience, and in many cases, you know, like you said, not being from the industry and maybe from a client perspective, having the ability to experience the building prior to build and being able to, you know, co-design your own building, make changes before construction is key now, and I think this will become, and it is the future. It's already with us, you're proving that, but you know, for the wider construction industry to embrace. We've got time for one more question. And again, linking through to life cycle cost really here, thinking about life cycle cost and maintenance, how are modular buildings, or how should modular buildings be maintained? Is there a contract between the installer? So, you know, Wernick, for instance, do you maintain your own buildings, or do you hand over maintenance of these buildings to the clients, and do you provide specialist training, for instance? How are those considerations factored in?
Well, at the end of the day, your modular building, once it's on site and it's being used as a building, an end-use building, it's no different than any way that a building's built, whether it be a timber frame house, a block frame, a block house, a steel frame structure to build an office block. All the internal elements, the partitions, the doors, the toilets, the heating systems, they're the same as everything else. The only thing different is that sort of inherent frame has been broken into boxes, as opposed to being perhaps a panel and post steel frame that's been put up there. So the maintenance, there's no real difference. And again, enhanced by the more digital work that's done up front, it means you don't have to go and search for the O&M manual or the as-built drawings that have been in somebody's desk forever and no one knows where they are. All that information is much more readily available. So if you want to extend a modular building in years to come, you can provide and find that information to look at what's structural and what's not. And then it makes it easier just to either maintain or extend or refurbish, because that information is much easier available. But this worry of it's something weirdly different, it isn't. The building we're in now, all the doors, all the windows, everything, they're just standard product. It's just that they've been put together differently in a factory. We don't use different windows or different materials. We've just engineered them to go together differently, and therefore the maintenance of them is as normal.
Great, thank you, Andy. And I suppose that brings our question time. We haven't got any further questions from our audience, so it brings our audience question time to an end. Also, it's unfortunately now time to draw the third Offsite Ready webinar to a close as well. today. So we've had brilliant insight into the world of digital design and estimating from Andy, Mark and Lindsay. Thank you to the panelists for being online with us today and taking the time out of your busy schedules to essentially facilitate this webinar. Can I also thank the audience for your participation today? Thank you for your questions. Thank you for engagement. We do have a number of further webinars planned for September. Keep an eye out on the Quick website, but also keep an eye out on our social media pages for some further dates. Those will be exploring the resources in general and providing an overview of educationally how you can embrace these and how you can engage and integrate them into your teaching practices. But in the meantime, feel free to explore the Offsite Ready resources at offsiteready.co.uk. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr. Stay safe and thank you for your time. I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you all. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.